You lose your keys. You stand in the kitchen and say it out loud. Where did I put them? No one else is home. No one is listening. And yet the words come anyway, spoken into an empty room like there's someone there to hear them. Almost everyone does this, muttering while searching for something, narrating while cooking, whispering a pep talk before a hard conversation. It feels like a small, slightly embarrassing habit, the kind of thing you'd deny if someone caught you doing it. But what if it isn't a glitch in your thinking? What if it's one of the oldest and most useful tools your brain has? To understand why you talk to yourself, you have to go back to before you could talk properly at all. In the 1930s, a Soviet psychologist named Lev Vygotsky noticed something odd about young children. Long before they could hold a real conversation, they would narrate their own actions out loud while playing. Stacking a block, they'd say, "Stack it here." Struggling with a puzzle, they'd mutter, "No, not that one." Vygotsky called this private speech, and he argued it wasn't random noise. It was thinking, happening out loud because a child's mind hadn't yet developed the ability to think silently. Here's the part that changes everything. Vygotsky believed that private speech doesn't disappear as we grow up. It goes underground. It becomes what he called inner speech, the silent internal voice that narrates your day, rehearses your arguments, and replays your regrets at 2 a.m. Your inner monologue isn't a separate, sophisticated system layered on top of childhood babble. It's the same tool, just turned inward. So when you catch yourself speaking out loud as an adult, you're not doing something strange. You're doing something old. You're letting a private, internal process spill back out into the world the way it used to work before you learned to keep it hidden. But why would speaking out loud actually help you think? Isn't silent thought supposed to be more advanced? This is where modern research gets interesting. In 2012, a psychologist named Gary Lupien ran an experiment at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He asked people to search for objects, sometimes in silence, sometimes while repeating the object's name out loud. The people who said the word out loud found what they were looking for faster. Saying banana out loud while scanning a cluttered image helped the brain lock on to the visual features of a banana more efficiently than silent thought did. Why would that be true? Speech isn't just a way to communicate with other people. It's a way to communicate with yourself. Saying a word out loud forces your brain to commit to a specific idea, a specific target, a specific plan. Silent thought is slippery. It drifts. Vague intentions can hide inside your head without ever being tested. Spoken thought has to become concrete enough to leave your mouth. And once it's out there, even just in an empty kitchen, your brain treats it with a little more weight. There's also the matter of control. Not just controlling your search for lost keys, but controlling yourself. A psychologist named Ethan Kross, who runs the Emotion and Self-Control Laboratory at the University of Michigan, has spent years studying what he calls chatter, the anxious, looping inner voice that replays your mistakes and rehearses your worries. Kross found something surprising about how people manage that chatter. The way you talk to yourself matters enormously, and one of the most effective tricks is switching from first person to second person, or even to your own name. Instead of thinking, "I'm going to fail this," the brain calms down when it hears, "You're going to be fine," or hears its own name, as in, "Sarah, you've done harder things than this." Kross's research showed that this small shift from I to you creates just enough psychological distance for the brain to treat the thought less like a threat and more like advice from a trusted outsider. It's the same reason a friend's calm voice can talk you down from panic more effectively than your own frantic thoughts can. Distanced self-talk borrows that same effect and produces it internally, or out loud, using nothing but a different pronoun. Which raises a strange question. When you talk to yourself out loud before a hard conversation or coach yourself through a stressful task, who exactly are you talking to? The honest answer is that you're talking to a version of yourself that exists just far enough outside your immediate panic to sound reasonable. Neuroscientist and writer Charles Fernhogue, who has spent much of his career studying inner speech and hallucinated voices, describes the inner monologue as more like a conversation than a monologue at all. Multiple perspectives, multiple voices, arguing, reassuring, questioning. Your mind isn't one narrator. It's more like a small internal committee, and sometimes that committee needs to speak up loud enough for your own ears to hear it clearly. This might also explain why talking to yourself tends to spike during two very different situations: high stress and deep focus. Under stress, speaking out loud slows down a racing mind. It forces your thoughts into a linear, spoken sequence instead of the tangled, simultaneous mess that anxiety tends to produce. That's why people pace and mutter before job interviews, or rehearse apologies in the car before walking through the front door. The mouth becomes a kind of pressure valve for a mind that's moving faster than it can organize itself. Under focus, something almost opposite happens. When a task demands total concentration, especially a physical or spatial one, like assembling furniture or navigating a tricky recipe, speaking your steps out loud helps you track where you are in a sequence. Researchers studying working memory have found that verbalizing steps reduces the load on the parts of the brain responsible for holding information temporarily. Your inner speech, given a voice, becomes an external notebook you don't have to remember. You are, in a very real sense, thinking with your mouth instead of only inside your skull. So the person muttering in the kitchen isn't lost in confusion. They're doing something closer to problem solving in real time, using a mechanism that predates their ability to read, write, or even fully reason in silence. There is, of course, a cultural weight attached to this. Talking to yourself in public carries a stigma. It gets read as a sign of instability, of losing your grip, something associated in the popular imagination with mental illness rather than mental efficiency. But the research tells a different story for the overwhelming majority of people who do it. Self-directed speech, especially the kind tied to specific tasks or emotional regulation, correlates with better performance, not worse. It's private speech doing exactly the job Vygotsky first described nearly a century ago, just finally let out into the open. Which means the next time you catch yourself narrating your own search for a missing phone or coaching yourself through a nerve-wracking phone call under your breath, you don't have to feel embarrassed. You're not malfunctioning. You're returning, briefly, to a tool your mind has used since before you could tie your shoes. A tool that helped you learn to stack blocks and now helps you hold a complicated thought together long enough to act on it. The voice in your head never really goes silent. It only learns, most of the time, to stay inside. And every so often, when the task is hard enough or the stakes are high enough, it slips back out, the same way it always did, because some thoughts were never meant to stay quiet in the first place. You lose your keys, you say it out loud, and somewhere underneath that small, ordinary moment, a 4-year-old version of your own mind is still quietly running the show.